Knock, knock, knock. Is this thing on? Oh my gosh. I can't believe I'm actually doing this. Hello. I am so glad you're here. If you are watching this right now, that means at some point in your journey and mine, you have either subscribed to, followed, or favorited this social media channel that you're watching this on right now. And so for that, I want to thank you. And I also want to apologize because I have definitely neglected these social media channels big time, at least up until now. That is about to change. And that is the purpose of this live stream. So thank you so much. But let me first back up. In case you don't know who I am, I'm Rosalinda Román. I go by Rosalinda, and I'm a classically trained broadcast journalist. What does that mean? Well, it means I have a bachelor's degree from in telecommunication from the University of Florida. Seems like a lifetime ago. And I worked at TV stations around the country as a reporter and anchor. I worked in Phoenix and Monterey and Tallahassee and Tampa, El Paso, and right here where I am right now in Albuquerque. And after my daughter was born in 2005, back then I was the main anchor in Monterey, California, I left my mainstream media career and eventually started my own independent work. So I went into podcasting back in 2007. That was very brand new. And I launched the first video podcast in the state of New Mexico called New Mexicast. And eventually I turned that into a weekly half-hour TV show that I did completely by myself. So that was an adventure. And then my family moved on to a sailing catamaran, and we did, I wrote about it a lot, but I also started an audio podcast called New Mexicastaways about that venture. Well, eventually I took all of those experiences, the podcasting experiences and broadcasting, and started teaching podcasting workshops called Untethered Podcasting. And finally, most recently, I launched a community called the Untethered Adventurers Club, which is really fun. It's a place for people who are other traveling families or living differently, who want to create content on the go. And it's like a support network for them, which is really cool. All of this to say, to say that I definitely dabble a lot, and I do a lot of different things. I actually realized I left my microphone way over here. So this is a perfect start to this live stream because I'm not perfect. This is part of why I haven't done it in a very long time because, I have certain perfectionist tendencies, but here I am and here you are. So thank you very much for joining me. The purpose of today's live stream is to kind of preview what is coming and to make a commitment to you. I'm at a point in my life where my 3 kids are getting older. One is already off to the Naval Academy, and the next one is hot on her heels. And so I really started doing some soul searching, brainstorming, figuring out what I wanted to do with this next chapter of my life. And what it came back to again and again was storytelling, that I missed storytelling. In my favorite parts of my career, I've always been a storyteller. And so this next chapter, I'm focusing on my roots, really. I'm going back to my roots, and that is writing. Back when I first graduated college, I won a William Randolph Hearst Special Award for my writing. I've written 2 full-length feature screenplays and a number of articles and things like that. So, but mostly I kind of hoarded that for myself and didn't really put it into the world. Well, I'm trying to change that now. I am changing that now. Let me be more positive. And I did already publish this. This is my book. It's called Losing Sight of the Shore. And the subtext is How to Live on a Boat Without Killing Your Family. So I published this book. And by the way, yes, those are my 3 kids and my German Shepherd. We lived on a boat called the Dawn Treader. I published this book in June of 2022. I don't know why my video keeps turning green. So I published that in 2022, but I really haven't done much with that, which obviously that's not good. I haven't done a lot of marketing. I shared it with family and friends, but haven't done a lot beyond that. So I'm trying to move into this new era where I actually do make an effort of stepping out of my comfort zone and actually sharing not just this work, but the work I'm working on now, which is a thriller. I'm writing my first novel. So I thought, well, let me get started on on focusing on my author business, not just being an author and not just writing privately in my, you know, in my closet, which I have a closet nook desk where I do a lot of my writing. But anyway, I want to start sharing it with you guys. So to that end, I am going to start live streaming by reading a chapter a week of my book, Losing Sight of the Shore. And so I'm going to start. I was thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, well, that's awesome. I'm going to read once a week. It's going to be Tuesdays at noon Mountain Time because I'm in New Mexico, so that's Mountain Time. And once a week, every Tuesday, I'm going to read a chapter from this book. But I was thinking, well, how do they know they want to come and listen to these chapters? Maybe my writing is terrible. Maybe they're not interested in this subject. So I'm going to right now read I'm going to read I'm going to read an excerpt from one of the chapters just to give you a little preview of what my book is like. And then you can decide if you want to come back next week. But first, before I do that, I'm going to be reading from chapter 10. And it's called Crystal Kayak. And if you don't know what a crystal kayak is, you need to look it up. It's literally a see-through kayak shaped more like a canoe. It's huge, but you sit in it and you can see like everything underneath you. So when you're maybe not so much in some of the murkier water we've been in, like in Maine or in Florida, but in the Bahamas, it's like sitting on top of an aquarium. It's amazing. So this chapter is called Crystal Kayak. There's a few things that I need you to know before I read what I'm about to read. And even before that, let me show you the coolness of this live stream. Right now, I just got a comment from a viewer who happens to be my sister, Sarah, and she said, "You go, sis, you're rocking it." So thank you. And just so you know, if you're watching this live, I would love to get a comment from you. If you put a comment in, she did it on Facebook. I'm not sure if all the platforms do that, but in theory, you can send me a note and I'll try to put it on here if it's decent. Anyway, so what you need to know about this chapter is that we were living on the Dawn Treader. I wrote about what I'm writing about was the last day we were actually on the Dawn Treader. It was a crazy night. Our liveaboard nanny at the time, her name was Lauren, so I'm going to mention her. And you should also know that our dinghy was broken. And if you don't know, a dinghy is like the little boat behind your boat that you take from your boat to the shore and back. I think that's all you need to know to at least make this make sense. So let me just read this to you. And oh shoot, I think I might have lost my place already. Well, that's not good. Give me a second. Okay, so I had been, we were living in Austin, Texas for a year after moving off the boat. And so I was saying that I was exactly where I needed to be and I was perfectly fine. But 11 months ago, I was not perfectly fine. I'm not able to read this because my vanity didn't allow me to put my glasses on. So now I can read it. Okay, let's start that again. But 11 months ago, I was not perfectly fine. I was pretty miserable, actually. The time had gotten away from me, mostly because I chose to host get-togethers in the cabin with all of our favorite kid boat families instead of packing and prepping. And we were down to the last 24 hours before our flight. In the only way that this salty tale could go, that night was the worst storm of the season. There was crazy lightning and thunder to go with the rain, and all of our friends had gone back to their boats for the night. Lauren and I decided it would be best for her to stay in the cabin with the kids and Nala so that I could be alone on the boat to pack. We had walkie-talkies to communicate from land to the boat if needed, but I was worried since I didn't have any way to get to them quickly in an emergency. The night began well with me getting a lot done around the boat and even getting the chance to record a podcast episode while I worked. Lauren and I checked in a couple of times, and it seemed like they were all fine despite the storm. She said they were going to bed and not to worry about them. Then the skies opened up even more than before. One massive lightning strike, quite close, knocked out all the power on shore, making the already black night dark as pitch. I confirmed that they were okay just before I heard a wrenching sound coming from the back of the Dawn Treader. I threw on my foul weather gear, a fancy rain jacket and overalls, and ran outside to investigate. There, hanging on by a rope tied to the cleat on the stern of the boat, was a completely submerged crystal kayak. Barely floating beside it was the dinghy, full to the top with water. The only reason it hadn't also sunk is that it was still attached to the davits, which were begrudgingly holding it just above the water level. I knew I was in big trouble with no one nearby to help. My first thought was to call Lauren and ask her to take one of the cabin's kayaks and come over to help me try to lift the kayak out of the water. But I quickly dismissed that idea as it would not only get Lauren soaked to the bone, but would leave our kids alone in a stream. What else could I do? Before this, I had never even been able to lift the dry crystal kayak by myself, despite having tried to do so on many occasions. Whenever I used the kayak before this, I would ask either Lauren or the two girls or anyone in earshot to help me. Now here it was, completely underwater, except for a tiny tip peeking out. I would need superhuman strength to lift it by myself. It's amazing what superpowers you find inside yourself. Were all working against me, and I knew if I didn't act right then, that tiny little rope holding her to the Dawn Treader would surely snap, and I might lose her forever. If she didn't wash out to sea, she would surely end up shattered on the rocky shore. Uh, on the rocky shore. I just had to lift her out of the water right then, all by myself. To my utter amazement, I did it. I reached down and, having technical difficulties, I reached down and pulled on the bow of the kayak while standing on the bottom step. I did my best to squat down and use the power in my quads to take the brunt of the weight as I slowly inched it higher and higher out of the water. All the while, the Dawn Treader was swinging in wide half circles through strong currents, making the job even harder. But inch by inch, I did it. As I slowly pulled the kayak out of the water, I heard the voice of 100. You can do it, Mommy, little by little and bit by bit. Back then, her adorable squeaky voice gave me the extra push I needed. And the memory of it did that for me again. I seriously can't remember a time in my life that I ever felt so strong and powerful as I did that the moment I walked up the steps carrying the crystal kayak to the forward deck all by myself. Moments like these are really all that is true of stories like these throughout my life. I'm talking about the moments, however they come, when you find yourself unexpectedly doing something or learning something or pushing through something that formerly seemed impossible and resided completely outside your comfort zone. The moments that test you in ways you didn't expect. And if you're lucky enough to experience that growth and learning beside the most beloved members of your personal tribe, then you are blessed beyond measure. We did that on. So that's how to live on a boat without killing your family or yourself. And I just wanted to share that with you because this is my next chapter. I am a full-time writer. I'm working on my author business. Live streams once a week on Tuesdays from at noon Mountain Time. I'll read one chapter each week and start to show videos and photos of some of the things we're talking about in these chapters. But I'm not going to overcommit. My first commitment is just that I'm going to start sharing these chapter by chapter once a week. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you did watch either live or in the replay, I would love for you to just give me a thumbs up or a comment, just so I know. I'm actually live streaming to multiple platforms right now. So depending on where you're watching this, I would love to get a comment so I know that's where you watch this. And if you liked it, let me know that you're going to come back next Tuesday and join me for chapter 1 of my reading. I think that's it. Oh, and in the show notes, I put a link in case you want to get a copy of your own so that you could follow along as I'm reading it. Please feel free to click that link and I would appreciate that. But mostly I'd love to hear from you just in a comment or a thumbs up. This series, I really appreciate